Welcome to M&A Access, the official podcast for AMAA, the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisition Advisors. My name is Gina Galusha, and today I'm here with Will Schroeder from Fox & Rothschild. Welcome, Will.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the invite. It's my first time in Dallas, and I've been hearing a lot about the innovation and investments that's been happening, so it's been really nice to see that firsthand.
How do you like Y'all Street so far?
Y'all Street is amazing. You know, I actually use Y'all and Common Day. I don't know where I picked it up from. I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
My dad's from Bethlehem.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
small world.
That is wild.
Yeah, so somehow I picked up on Y'all, and I'll be saying it every day, and so I fit right through in here.
There you go. That's perfect. Yeah, my use of Y'all, I grew up in Michigan, but my use of Y'all came from my high school sweetheart being from Georgia.
Wow.
So you might want to examine that with your therapist and just be like, where did this come from?
See what's going on there. Do some deep diving there. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where are you now? What are you up to?
So I'm a corporate attorney with Fox Rothschild. I do the whole gambit of corporate law, from the formation stage to when people are raising money, corporate maintenance, so if they're entering into loan agreements or employment agreements, and then obviously the most exciting part is the mergers and acquisitions part, right? So I help sellers and buyers and guide them through that whole process there.
Okay. All right. You said it's your favorite part. Why is it your favorite part?
It's honestly a very two-part. For a first-time seller, it's a very emotional experience, right? Because oftentimes you have sellers that they've spent 10, 15, 25, maybe their whole entire life building a business, and then they kind of get to reap the rewards of what they sowed, right? And they get to have a financial exit that can be oftentimes life-changing, right? So there's that aspect. And then on the buyer side, you know, you have entrepreneurs who have a grand vision. And for example, if they're executing some sort of roll-up strategy, they're buying a bunch of different companies and putting them together, helping them to execute on that dream is very inspiring.
Okay. All right. I dig that. You said emotional. I think, that's what I hear most from our advisors is that they're dealing with a lot of emotions. Absolutely. And it's mostly therapy and part M&A advising, right?
Absolutely.
So, but those are good emotions and bad emotions, right? Absolutely. You have to kind of sort through both. What do you find are kind of those moments that evoke emotion for those first-time sellers?
I think the whole entire process.
Okay.
Right? Because oftentimes, one, maybe on the business side and financial side, they may feel like their business is worth more. And maybe they agree to a certain value in the LOI. And then as we go through the process of doing the due diligence and they're hemmed up and doing all that work and responding to requests, they feel like this is a lot of work, right? Maybe I should get more money. Another aspect is, going through that process of reviewing their documents, corporate documents, loan documents, vendor agreements. They go through the whole 9 yards of everything they've been through with that business. So maybe they get to the point where it's like, I don't know if I really want to get rid of this. Like, this is my baby, right?
Right.
So it can be very emotional that way.
It's like a mom at graduation going through the pictures for the board. Yes.
Absolutely.
I can see that. When you, as the attorney, get involved, where do you typically get involved, and where do you like to get involved?
That's such a great question. So, lawyer, public service announcement. If we take a step back, I would say for any business owner that's thinking about selling their business, at least a year to 2 years out, they should think about the type of team that they want to have in place, the investment bankers, the brokers, and obviously the attorneys. Take the time to meet with attorneys, see how they communicate to you, see how they communicate risk to you, have them do a temperature check of your business to see, are your corporate governing documents okay? What type of agreements are you entering into? Are they all written down? Sometimes we have agreements that are more handshake, and that can be a problem later down the line.
During diligence,
so, you don't want to deal with those issues when you're going through diligence. So, obviously, I would prefer to get involved at least a year, 2 years out. Oftentimes, I'm getting looped in right before or post-LOI execution, so that's a whole other animal in itself. And just in that point, if we're going to get looped in there, at least loop in the attorney before signing the LOI, right? So they can really explain to you the risk of what you're agreeing to in the LOI. And oftentimes the LOI isn't binding, right? Most of the times it's not. But still, that can set the basis and the ground level for the negotiations. So if you agree to an earnout, for example, and then all of a sudden when you loop your attorney in, they tell you with an earnout, there's a lot of risk. You may not get that money. That would be nice to know beforehand, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Either way, they need to spend time with you to make sure that the house is in order, right? Yeah. What's the difference between the house being in order prior to going to sale versus during diligence?
I would say that it's more efficient when the house is in order prior to sale. And also, you got to think about when the buyer is going through that process of doing due diligence and they see that you don't have any bylaws, you don't have your shareholders agreement up to date.
The doubt starts to creep in.
Yeah, you originally were in business with your brother, but he's no longer in the business, but maybe he's still on the shareholders agreement or maybe he's still in the operating agreement.
Right.
So when you clean that up prior to going through the LOI and the diligence, it's more efficient, it's more smooth, and obviously it can be more cheaper, right? Because that's less work that your attorney team has to do on the back end.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, so many times you hear the phrase time kills deals, right? And so it's probably the same amount of time taken on cleaning up the house, but at the same time, it's much less likely to kill the deal if you do it prior to even going to market, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's absolutely correct. And it may even take more time because you got to think your deal team now is dealing with rectifying an issue while trying to deal with other responsive issues that they have to do, right? So, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Okay, so say that you get pulled in LOI and you see an LOI and you're just like, oh man. How do you approach that conversation?
So at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneur's decision whether or not they're going to go through a certain level of risk, right? My job is to break down and distill that risk, present it to the entrepreneur. Obviously, we as attorneys have to have certain red lines, but if there's something that's like if there's an earnout in there and, for example, it's based on EBITDA and our client signed an employment agreement for 6 months post-closing, but they don't have any operational control, I'm going to break that down to the seller and say, listen, these are all the risks that are inherent here. Maybe you should have a discussion on the business side before I, as an attorney, approach the other attorney. And I'm a real big fan of doing that, right? Mm-hmm. I think that most of the times, if there's any point of contention, you should let the business, the seller, and the buyer people, let them get together and hash it out. Because once the attorneys get to hashing it out and trying to negotiate, who knows what happens. And as you said, time often kills deals, so that can add a lot of time to the process. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. You prefer in-person, I'm assuming, versus virtual?
To be honest, I think in my experience, all of my closings have been virtual.
Okay. But I'm talking about like that moment when they need to hash it out, the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, if they can. Yeah. I think even for the buyers and the sellers, often maybe they meet initially in person, but the rest of the process is usually done virtual. But if they're in the same location and they have the opportunity to go in person, absolutely. It would be great to have those tough conversations in person.
Cool. So you mentioned earlier that you've got, the investment bankers on both sides and you've got the attorneys on both sides and the CPAs. How do you navigate all of those cooks in the kitchen? What is that? Tell me a story about when that team was like the Avengers, the dream team, kicking butt versus.
Yeah. I think that legal has to stick to legal. Mm-hmm. Business and financials have to stick to business and financials. We all have to know our place. And obviously, as deal attorneys, we're expected to know some aspect of the financials, but we really need to rely on the experience of those experts in those certain fields. Where we see the nightmare scenario is where everyone's trying to play a different part. You got an investment banker trying to play lawyer, a lawyer trying to be CPA, and that just stalls the whole process. So the dream team is consistency and focusing on what you're supposed to do, staying in your lane, and having communication. So if I see something from my perspective that's an issue on the financial side, I'll communicate with the CPA or the financier or whatever, the investment banker, and really lean on their experience there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes total sense. That I've taken our certification course, and that's the exact same thing that the attorney who teaches that module said. Is attorneys, here's your part, and don't let your attorneys do more than that.
Absolutely.
Right? So I love that. Okay, switching to the buy side. When you're working with a buyer, what percentage of your business is sell side and what percentage is buy side?
So in my experience, a majority of what I was doing was on the buy side.
Okay.
I was involved with a client who was doing a lot of roll-ups. So majority of it has been on the buy side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that client who's doing the roll-ups, or when you're dealing with a first-time buyer, what is the difference in how you approach and think about it from the buy side perspective versus the sell side?
I think it's the same, but just inverse, right?
Okay.
So on the buy side, I'm going to be looking for, do they have all the agreements in place? Are there change in control provisions, right? Are there consents required? Have we spoken with the seller to see what type of relationship they have with their landlord, their lender, their third-party contractors? Is there going to be an issue if we approach them and say, hey, listen, we have a potential buyer coming in to purchase the assets of the business. They want to transfer this agreement over. Is that going to be an adversarial process? Because, that can really hurt the value of whatever my client is buying, right? So there's a lot of risk there.
Okay. All right. When you are thinking through a buy-side deal, what are the red flags that you look for?
Lack of corporate documents.
Okay.
Right? Handshake deals. And non-responsiveness.
Non-responsiveness in terms of you're not getting a response and you wonder why?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, say the seller is on their third amended operating agreement, and we keep on asking them from the first and second, and they keep on saying they don't have it, they don't have it, they don't have it. That's a major red flag because it sounds like they're hiding something, because you would think if they don't have it, obviously when they open up their business bank account, the bank would have it on file, their CPA should have it on file. So that would be a red flag. Yeah.
So what are the moments where you think a divorce is going to happen and then it doesn't?
So on the sell side, we've been in positions where the buyer is asking for excessive requests, right? So as I talked about with the change in control provisions, you should really only go and get the consent when it's required, right? You don't want to go and alert everyone you're doing business with that you're going to be selling your business or that you sold your business, right? If the buyer is asking the seller to go and get consents from everyone, now that's putting the seller in a compromising position, right?
Correct, yeah.
Especially if the deal falls through. Your third parties that you're dealing with, they're going to kind of see what's going on with this guy. Is he stable? What's going on with his business? Is he going to go out of business? Can I rely on him?
Right. Is there a time that you think in the deal flow that is the most fragile or the most critical on the sell side or the buy side?
I would say everything is critical and fragile all the way up until signing.
Goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no moment where you're like, I can sleep tonight.
Even for attorneys, not only when the documents are signed, but when all the post-closing deliverables are also in order
when everything is signed.
When everything is signed, everything's been delivered that we have to deliver. We can put together a nice closing book. We're good then.
Okay. All right. And then with the buy side, what are moments that you saw we talked about sell side breakups and moments where you were like, oh, shoot. What about buy side?
I think if there was a miscommunication, as I spoke about in the beginning, if there's a miscommunication in the offering price in the LOI, and we found something in diligence that is pretty worrisome, it's not going to make the deal not happen. But it's definitely going to affect the value of what the buyer thought they were buying.
Tell us the story of your favorite deal that you've worked on. What was great about it? What do you feel good about when you look back at it?
Yeah, my favorite deal of all time actually almost became a litigation suit, right? So it was two business owners. They were best friends. They started a business together. It's a story old as time. And they had a falling out, and our client came to me and asked, literally she wanted to buy out the other partner, and she wanted to pay the least amount of money as possible. And she was very, very invested in this business. And I can't go into the specifics of it, but I just remember when we were able to get the membership transfer documents executed and everything was finalized. She was so emotional. We got on the phone. She was crying. So it wasn't a traditional M&A deal, but it had a lot more emotion, as we were talking about in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And her business is doing great to date. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that, it's not just when the contract's signed, but it's all the post paperwork is in. What are those other key items that need to happen and need to fall in place to make the deal one where you're like, this one's really done? If
there's any outstanding consents that we're waiting on, if there's any payoffs, right? Mm-hmm. So if there were loans that were still outstanding on some of the assets that the buyer was buying and assuming or whatnot, making sure that preferably you'd want that done before closing, mm-hmm. but if it can't, sometimes you close and they're not done yet, right? So making sure that there's not any outstanding liabilities going on out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially for the payoffs
mm-hmm.
when they're attached to assets that were purchased.
Right. And what about kind of indemnification and some of those other technical legal moments that sellers had never even heard of before?
Yeah. So I guess just a breakdown of indemnification. It's going to be hooked to the reps and warranties, right, in the purchase agreement. So, for example, John Doe is going to rep and warrant that they're the sole owner of the membership interests in the LLC or the corporation that's being purchased, right? And there's an indemnification period that can go, and that's negotiated, right? Maybe it can go 3, 4, 5 years. And if 4 years down the line, someone comes up and says, hey, I have a stock certificate right here. It was never terminated. I actually own equity in the business. The seller would have to indemnify and face any damages that are going to arise out of that.
What would you kind of share in terms of escrows? What are they? How do they work? Why do they matter?
Yeah, so coming back to the reps and warranties, there can be a certain portion of the consideration for the transaction mm-hmm. that's placed into an escrow account. And in the event that there's an IP infringement claim or something of the sort, gotcha. And there's damages or legal fees and whatnot, that money can come directly out of that escrow amount that was put in there, that portion of the payment price. And for a buyer, you like that because you don't have to go through the whole process of suing the seller, right? For a seller, it keeps you up at night, obviously, because that's money that you haven't been paid. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. And then when you're thinking through the best deal mm-hmm. for the seller and buyer, how do you look at earnouts?
I think that the best way to look at earnouts is just a passing on of risk by the buyer to the seller. I think most of the times, I would say 99% of the times in my experience, an earnout really benefits the buyer. So there's ways that an attorney can go in and protect the seller and put in obligations where the buyer has to operate the business in a commercially reasonable fashion, the same way it was beforehand. And also, when you think about the financial and performance metrics, maybe there's a way that our seller can sign an employment agreement and they can have some directional control if there was supposed to be a contract that was obtained and agreed to, and then there'd be an earnout payment, right? Or maybe instead of basing the earnout on EBITDA, you can base it on top-line revenue, so you can avoid some of the financial gymnastics that may occur, right?
Mm-hmm. Make it easier to calculate.
Absolutely. Yeah. More straightforward.
Totally.
But
that makes sense.
For a seller, be wary of earnouts for sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, too, those deals where they stay on board mm-hmm. are so hard.
1,000%.
Because, you've been steering the ship for so long.
Absolutely.
And then you're handing over the wheel.
Absolutely.
But also need that revenue to be strong to get what you feel like you earned, right?
Exactly.
And agreed on.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of tricky
emotions.
Human dynamics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. As the attorney on the deal, how do you think through how you really protect your buyer or your seller without kind of killing the momentum by overdoing it and over lawyering.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said at the beginning of the podcast, a deal lawyer obviously has to have certain red lines, and you can't compromise on everything. You can't compromise on the things that truly matter. But ultimately, it's the entrepreneur, the business owner, the buyer. It's up to them at the end of the day what risk they're willing to assume. What's their risk tolerance?
Right.
That's why it's so important for, prior to going through the deal process, for business owners and buyers to develop a relationship with an attorney that can really distill and explain that risk in a way that's comprehensive to them.
That makes total sense. When I think through all of the ways a deal can be structured, right, it almost reminds me of the menu at Cheesecake Factory, you know, where you're like, oh my gosh, so many options.
Yeah.
Where do I even
Pick and
start?
choose, yeah.
So being that person who can say, okay, looking at what your goals are, looking at what this business is, let's look at this page of the menu,
absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then talk through it. Is that kind of how you do it?
1,000%.
Okay.
1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your lead sources? How do you get called onto a deal? Do you primarily, you know, go out and seek business owners to work with, or, you know, do you network with investment bankers who pull you on? Is it a mix of all of the above?
Right now I'm doing all of the above.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All of the above.
Yeah, all of the above for sure.
And what are the ways that you find are the most useful in reaching out to those qualified leads and connecting with them?
Meeting them in person.
Okay.
Going to events, right? Like the event next week. Building those relationship. It's a long-term investment, right? You shouldn't go into it thinking, I'm going to immediately get business from this. You go into it first by showing the third parties that, you know, you're a regular human being. You know what you're doing. You have expertise. And you really can't go into it with a business mindset because people can tell, and that really pushes people off, right? So just being a normal human being and connecting with people.
Right. Yeah. It's very relational business.
Yeah, 1,000%.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. I'm glad I'm not the only one who says 1,000%. That makes me feel better.
It's one of my. I got y'all, and I got 1,000%.
My go-to, especially when I'm dealing with things I'm enthusiastic about, is 100,000%.
I'll have to add that to my repertoire.
Just when you need to like level it up just a little bit. Just a little bit. So, as a younger professional, when you got into the M&A space, what was the thing that most surprised you?
So, when I got into the M&A space as a young professional, one of the most surprising things was how fast the deal process can ramp up. You know, you can have a deal that's been sitting idle for 2 to 3 months, and all of a sudden we're closing at the end of the month, right? Or we're closing in 2 weeks. So really staying on your toes. And, you know, in M&A, it really ebbs and flows, right? So that's definitely a day in the life of a deal attorney.
That's true.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had something scheduled with a member and they're like, sorry, deal emergency, gotta go. Yeah, it happens. And what other things did you find maybe overwhelming or you really were grateful for a mentor for?
I mean, all around, I've been grateful for my mentors from the very start. I mean, when you're a young attorney getting into your first deal, you have so many different things flying around, right? One of my first mentors in the industry, he was really, really adamant about having your list, having your closing checklist, right? Making sure you have everything dotted, T'd, keep on going over it every single day, right? So, yeah.
Other lessons you've learned from mentors that have been really instrumental?
I would shameless plug to attorney James Sanders at MPL Law Firm. One of the first things he ever told me was to have my personal board of directors. Right? You know, you're 3 to 7 people that you run ideas off of because, you know, sometimes the attorneys need a therapist as well, right? Or they need someone that can really vet what they're doing and vet how they're thinking and processing issues, right? So absolutely.
Is that not working in your own thought bubble?
Absolutely, right? Yeah. Not getting stuck in your own echo chamber. It's
Yeah.
real easy to buy into your ego and all these different things. Or even in a negative sense, to really get down on yourself. So it's amazing to have that personal board of directors to help uplift you and guide you throughout the process.
For sure. When that cortisol is flowing, it's really hard to see your way out of that.
You got to take a deep breath. You got to take a deep breath.
And phone a friend.
Absolutely. Yeah. Phone many friends.
Many friends.
Yes.
Many friends, for sure. Okay. And then what are you looking forward to next? What's your kind of next horizon, the ways you want to level up?
I just want to continue to expand my practice and to really be of service and really to provide value to clients, especially in this day of AI. I'm really hungry to continue to evolve and develop different ways where I, as an attorney and advisor, can provide value to clients.
How have you dabbled in AI?
So these are my personal views and not respective or anything of Fox Rothschild.
For sure.
The firm has tools that we use every single day. I am a big advocate for it, especially as a younger professional, in terms of closing the learning curve. I think it's an amazing tool. I try to use it in everything I do. Even outside of work, I'm using AI.
Right. One of the things I hear so often from the experts that we have on the podcast and that I work with here at AMA is that you need to not let AI be the expert.
Yeah.
And as a younger professional who, hasn't seen all the ropes yet, how do you fact check?
Straight to my mentors in the firm. Yeah. Like attorney Terrence Kerwin. My office is right next to him. If something's not adding up, I go right to him and get it cleared, and he can lean on his experience and help guide me.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially the way that AI is created, it's so confident it can have you believing things that are completely not true. So that's why responsible AI use is so important.
Are you working in any specific industries right now? Are you industry agnostic? Are you looking to break into other industries?
I'm industry agnostic. I have a lot of experience in the HVAC industry.
Okay. Well, it's busy right now.
It's very busy.
Yes.
Speaking about AI, there's a little moat going on there.
Yes.
But I really try to be industry agnostic.
Okay. What do you think is the next moat?
I think AI infrastructure. If it's not already a major moat. Yeah, but definitely AI infrastructure. I think that it's like we have our phones and they're such powerful tools, but without being able to plug our phones into the wall and get that energy, right, that source to charge it, it's kind of useless, right? So all these AI tools are amazing, but without having the data capacity and the energy, it can be useless, right? Yeah.
Or the water.
That's a less known fact for sure. I guess that's becoming more and more prevalent in the news today. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I hear about that all the time.
Yeah, it's a major issue.
The water you're using. Okay. Well, we're so grateful that you joined us on the podcast and came to Dallas in Y'all Street. I hope you get some good barbecue. If you need any recommendations, let me know.
Sounds like a plan to me.
I love food.
Me too.
Yeah. It's so good. And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. These kinds of conversations are happening all the time. We'd love for you to join in, whether it's through our monthly webinars, our biannual conferences, or our SEMA certification, and then we have our chapter events across the nation all year round. You can find out more at amaonline.com. Until then, see you next time.